week, an edition that is going to be discussing in an exclusive manner with the national chairman of the Social Democratic Front, the flag bearer for the SDF at this year's presidential election. We are going to be discussing with him on the vision, mission, and governance policies he has for the nation, because as we know, the goal for the Social Democratic Front is to win this year's elections and turn the pitch on governance issues as well as policies for Cameroon. We are very glad, honored to have you in our studios, Honourable Joshua Osih.
Thank you for having me, and it's a pleasure being here.
And we are going straight away with the questions. You were recently selected at an extraordinary convention that took place in Yaoundé by militants of the party who came from all 10 regions. And the first question I'll ask is whether it was obligatory or a formality to go through that process.
Well, it's a constitutional disposition, and we respect the laws, especially when we put in the laws ourselves. And so it's an exercise that happens in every year where there is a presidential election. The country comes together in an extraordinary convention to select its candidates. So we go through primaries to have our candidates.
Okay. There was a controversy anyway, but talks are still wagging on the issue of the payment of 50 million francs to stand for these elections, and many persons are still wondering why this was necessary to get the best candidate for the Social Democratic Front.
Well, I think candidates for the post of chairperson of the party had to pay caution as well.
Yes.
And I would just like to draw your attention to the fact that the conditions that had to be fulfilled, the candidature form was on 8 pages.
Okay.
So it's just one line that was the caution.
Okay.
And you know that a presidential election needs a caution of 30 million francs. And so the whole idea of a caution is to make sure that those presenting themselves in front of the delegates to be chosen have the capacity to raise funds.
Okay.
Okay, it doesn't mean that you need to go and sell your plot or whatsoever. It means that you need to show that you have the capacity to raise funds and to give those funds to the party as a caution, non-refundable, so that we know that you mean business. Because you know, very often, and especially the way things go today, you often have people coming in for internal elections sponsored from outside, and so on. And you need to put in place mechanisms to reduce that to a maximum. And that was done during the convention in 2023, and it was done again in 2025. And I think it's a good thing. It shows that we are a serious party and we mean business. If you want to be president of the republic and you have a quarrel over being able to raise 50 million francs, then you're not serious.
Okay. I hope televiewers are clear about this issue. It had to do with getting the most serious candidates so that when they are presenting the flag bearer to run for presidency, they should be sure of this person. Then eventually many persons have been talking, especially on the issue of the coalition. I know we are soon going to be looking at the key issues as far as governance is concerned, but I want us to clear what people are talking about. You made a statement recently on this coalition talk, and many persons are still not very clear about the stance of the Social Democratic Front with respect to a possible coalition for the October elections.
Well, we had our primaries, and our delegates from all 10 regions chose their candidate for the presidential election. So that is behind us.
Okay.
Now, all this talk about coalitions and alliances, it's all, I think it stems from a deficit of political education.
Okay.
And if we have like-minded political parties that come together in an alliance to go for this election, that's a very good thing. I would like to tell you that right now the political program of the Social Democratic Front was built up with 9 other political parties. We held workshops with them, with 11 out of 12 trade union confederations participated in building up that political program. So that's already an alliance. That's a group work. That's a huge momentum that is going towards this election. And I would like to specify that those parties with whom we collaborated so far are like-minded parties. They are all from the left. Meaning they're either socialist or social democratic parties. So we have absolutely no problem working with others moving forward. Absolutely no problem.
What does the leadership, what type of leadership do you think Cameroon is lacking to turn things around? Because you are coming in to lead Cameroon, and many persons are wondering that things are not working because we got clear leadership issues. What leadership are you bringing into Cameroon? Well,
I would like to change the paradigm in that question a little bit, because leadership is one issue. What type of leadership you're bringing is another issue. But the fundamental issue is, do we need to entrust 99.9% of all competencies and powers into one individual? And I say no. That is not possible. And that is what has to be broken down. That system needs to be broken down. And whether you take the best leader, take the Pope, take Barack Obama, take Kum, take anybody and put in that seat with disproportional amount of powers, the result will be what we have today. So we need to build that down. That's the first thing. So you need a leadership that is ready and engages in building down or tearing down that system to make sure that powers go to the lower levels. And that's what we stand for. We stand for power to the people. We stand for federalism. We stand for parliamentary powers. We believe the fact that the powers, when you are president of the republic, you need to be accountable, and the parliament needs to have the necessary powers to check you and even to impeach you. So that is what the leader that I am is trying to bring. I have the courage to break down that system to make sure that power comes back to the people. And so the type of leadership you now use to take it there, well, I am used to an Anglo-Saxon type of leadership in which you don't rule by fear, but you rather rule by sharing, by having inclusive decisions, by listening, by leading the way. And the size of a leader is measured by the amount of followers that leader has. And so it is very important that when you are in a position, this country has never enjoyed an Anglo-Saxon leadership at its helm, never. And I think it's big time that it happens, and to show the way that a country of 30 million free individuals, creative individuals, cannot evolve, cannot grow, cannot develop with that type of leadership we have today, which is leadership by fear. You need leadership, you need leaders who exchange, leaders who talk, leaders who come out, leaders who get in touch with the problems of the people of every day. And that can only happen as well if we are able to break that system, because in the system in which we are today, it is designed only to work from fear, leadership from fear.
You talk about federalism, which is what the Social Democratic Front has been talking about since inception. What form of federalism are we talking about? Some persons are confused whether it is a 2-state, a 4-state, a 10-state. What is the SDF proposing?
Well, Leonard, your question is already wrong. Okay, but being polite, there is never a wrong question, there are only wrong answers. Why is your question wrong? Because federalism has nothing to do with geography. Where the boundaries are, what the size of those boundaries are, and so on, is irrelevant. federalism is all about money. It's all about where the competencies are, where the powers are, and so on and so forth. And we talk about a three-tier federalism, okay? We believe that 100% of all what we have should come down to the people at the level of the councils.
Okay.
Okay? And you put in place a system of subsidiarity. Okay? So only what the councils cannot do is done one level above. You call it a region, call it a province, call it a state. You can call it what you want. Only what the councils cannot do on their own is done at one level above. And only what we call today the regions cannot do is done at the federal level or the national level, or if you want, Yaoundé. That's the system of subsidiarity in a federal dispensation. Meaning that if you take, for example, education, okay, you will agree with me that 360 councils we have all over Cameroon, 360 universities would be a bit too much, okay? So you can say that, okay, education up to higher education is at the level of the council. So the council takes care of the nursery school, the primary school system, the secondary school, the high school system, vocational training, etc. And one level above, which is the level of the region, today known as the region, you put in, in the system of subsidiarity, you put in higher education, okay, universities, and so on. Okay, specialized schools, universities, and they are at that level. And at the level of Yaoundé, you have the national curriculum, you have the GC board, well, in Boya, but at the national level, you have all of those institutions that harmonize the education in the entire country. You see? And that's how it functions. Now, where that boundary is irrelevant. It's absolutely irrelevant. Okay. Whether you make it 2 states, 10 states, 20 states, 4 states, that's another discussion that we can have at that time. What you need to put the form of the state is about the organization of that state. So the size of the councils, whether some councils say they are too big or too small, will be a whole different ballgame. But the whole idea is that competencies are at the level...
Okay, should be sent down to the...
of the people.
Okay.
Nobody knows better what is necessary for the people than those who manage the people at the bottom. That is the councils.
Okay.
That's where development comes from. And that is why federalism is so important, because it's power to the people.
It's power to the people. What are the 3 main policies you will prioritize in your first 100 days in office?
I hate that question.
Okay.
I hate that question because every measure that we're proposing is important. And after 43 years of waiting, every measure is actually already late.
Okay.
So every measure has a priority. But if you ask me, I would say I would go for, well, we've promised that in the first day, in the first 24 hours, we'll have some disruptive measures. All those measures that can be brought about through executive orders, what you call décret, they can be done within 24 hours. And as a matter of fact, you can even put in place some ordinances that can be refreshed later on by Parliament. So we're talking about 20 disruptive measures that are going to be taken. So it sends a clear message that the country is changing. If you ask a second measure that I may talk, is to start immediately from day one, arresting the violence in the northwest and southwest. And there are a series of measures that we are proposing to get there, and the first measures can be taken the first day. You know, I always say, if you need to make peace, you need to talk to your enemy. And you cannot talk to your enemy who is behind bars. So it is urgent for us to look at ways and means to bring in an enabling environment to talk peace. And so, for instance, those prisoners who do not have blood on their hands, they need to be released. We need to be able to talk with them. We need to be able to build up this country again from where it is. We need to have that courage to go that far and understand that for 8 years we have been in war, and that war needs to end. And there is a price to pay for it. And we need the leadership that is in prison in Yaoundé. That leadership needs to be, I mean, their detention conditions need to be, I would say, looked at properly, because the President of the Republic cannot go and talk to people who are chained up. You know, you need to, even when Mandela was talking to the racist regime in South Africa, I mean, de Klerk and so on, they looked for an enabling environment where those talks could take place and so on. So, I mean, there are a series of measures that can be taken. And then one of the main measures that I think will be one of the measures that go deep into my heart is the Heritage Grant, what we call the Heritage Grant, which is, it is a grant designed to take within 5 to 7 years about 6 million Cameroonians out of poverty. And this grant is addressed towards families, and it's actually it's something that worked very well in Brazil, and I actually had the pleasure, having worked with President Lula of Brazil, I had the pleasure to go and visit some places where this project is ongoing, and I was amazed because he was able to take out 30 million Brazilians from poverty. And so it's a very interesting scheme. It's basically, instead of dashing out money as the government does today, and most of that money to themselves, what you do is actually you take in families, the bottom of your society, that is the poorest of the poorest families all over Cameroon, and you follow them up. And how do you do that? Is that you give them responsibilities, for instance, the schooling of their children, for instance, the medical follow-up of the entire family, for instance, the targets that they're supposed to achieve. So if you, for instance, talking about the rural family working on the land as farmers, part of that grant will be in the form of seeds and fertilizers and tools and so on. And the other parts that will be financial, one part of it will be with vouchers that can be used in hospitals and so on, and another part of it will be cash, and the part that is cash is given to the wife, is given to the mother of the family to make sure that she takes care of the kids. The whole idea is that those children have equal opportunities as every other Cameroonian child, so that by the time these children grow up, you effectively have 30 million first-class citizens in Cameroon, and not what we have today, where you have just about 10,000 first-class citizens and all the lesser second and third-class citizens.
Since you already touched on the Anglophone crisis, I want us to get back into it. From what I get from you, you are not delegating anybody to talk with the likes of the Ayuk Tabes and those who are in prison. You are moving to talk with them yourself.
Of course. If you are the leader of a country, you need to take responsibility. You need to come out there. I do not understand how we can be in a civil war for 8 years. The President of the Republic has never been there. I mean, you take responsibility, you move on. You go where you have to be. You can see what happened in Chad, or what is happening in Chad with Boko Haram. Why is Boko Haram not attacking Jamena? Because each time they come in, the president stands out. And that is a leader. That is a chief of staff. That is the number one person in the country, is the president. And you cannot delegate the peace. You cannot delegate such an important aspect of the life of your citizens. You must be there yourself, and you must be able to talk to these people, and you must be able to get to an agreement that will take the country further. And I think much of that agreement is already in our political program, where we talk about the refoundation of our institutions after 3 years, because stopping the violence in the Northwest and Southwest in 100 days, that is something we're going to do. And thereafter, or even within those 100 days and up to 3 years after, we're talking about the Constitutional Conference, we're talking about getting into a referendum, and we hope that the Cameroonian people will vote yes for that referendum to give us a federal state, to give more powers to Parliament, to give more powers to our councils, and at such a time, we'll have the remaining 4 years of our mandate to implement those fundamental institutional changes that we are proposing. That's what we're selling to the Cameroonian people, and that's what we're going to do.
Now, when I announced that you are going to be part of tonight's edition of the program, so many persons are asking how often you visit the Southwest and the Northwest region to get a feel of what the people go through.
Well, I would say that I visit it very often, and probably not as often today as used to be the case, but maybe your viewers should understand that I have responsibilities in the Southwest and, by the way, in the Northwest as well. And so those responsibilities oblige me to be in those two regions as often as possible. You know, due to security concerns, I hate being guarded. I hate mobilizing the gendarmerie or the army around my person, because I feel that that is removing security away from those who need it most, those living there. But I'm often there. I am a chief in my village, so we have no quarrels. We are on the field. We meet with the people. We talk to the people, and you know, sometimes as well, it's also important to have a vision from afar to better see the things that maybe those who live in the Northwest and Southwest do not see. But rest assured, the program that I'm developing, or I'm sharing with you today, was built up, as I just told you. We worked with 9 other political parties, 11 trade union confederations, and I went around the entire country. And I was in the Southwest. I talked to the people. I sat down with the people. Just on the issue of ending the violence in the Northwest and Southwest, I talked to everybody. I talked to the administration, the army, the police, the gendarmes. I talked to the secessionists. I talked to those abroad who are part of them. I talked to those living there. So it's not something we sat in an office somewhere and developed. No, it's something that comes from the aspiration of the Cameroonian people. So not only that element, every other element in that program. And guess what? The problem of the Northwest and Southwest crisis is not a Northwest or Southwest affair. It's a national affair. And you also have to go and feel what people tell you about this in Yokaduma, in Kuseri, in Marwa, and so on, because it's a national affair. So you might be having a solution. If that solution is not one that people in the rest of the country agree with, then you have a problem with your solution. So you need to be able to discuss it openly and share views with it, and maybe even exchange. You know, in about 5 years ago, I was in Mayo Danai for the floods, or 3 years ago, I was there for the floods. And it so happened that in one of the villages seriously touched, they just buried some days before one of theirs who was a soldier in the Northwest, who was killed in the middle of this crisis. And it was very tense, because as I got there, they believed that as an Anglophone, I had responsibility in the death of their soldiers. So we had a long exchange. We talked right into the night. And, well, you know how those things are. You cannot convince everybody, but at least I learned a lot. And I learned a lot from the expectations of these people. And guess what? It is a national problem, because their children too are dying.
Okay, the children are dying. Now, Cameroon is a country with very diverse ethnic groups, languages, and religion. How do you plan to foster national unity and ensure all groups feel represented? Because it comes directly to what you were saying just some seconds ago. But are you scared, or are you comforted by what we get today, the tribal regional divide we live in Cameroon?
No, we have a problem of bad governance.
Okay.
Don't mix it up.
Okay.
How do you feel that tribalism? Because all decisions are taken in Itudi. All decisions are taken by the presidency. And these decisions would favor one side of the country rather than the other one. The problem is not having someone in there who now takes 360 decisions so that each council area has the right. No. The problem is to break down that system and bring down the power to the people. Okay? So you don't need to look elsewhere for your solutions. That's the entire problem is there. Okay. This Jacobinism, this hyper-presidentialism is the issue. And so people tell you, well, all the DOs are from one region. All the SDOs are from one region. All the Director Generals of parastatals are from one region. But why do we have DOs in the first place? That's a real question you should ask yourself. Why do you have SDOs in the first place as well? And why should we bother about them? If you go to a federal country, go to anyone, Germany, England, Britain, and the USA, just to name a few, Nigeria just next door, or South Africa, and you can go on. Every country that is successful has that system in place. In America, people care most of who is their governor, who is their mayor, who is their sheriff. They don't care about who is the president. The president is there for foreign relations. He's not there to make their lives better, you understand? So that is the fundamental problem that we need to solve. And once we have solved that problem, every other thing will move along. Because right now we concentrate all our energy to try to get one person who will have all the powers. But what we should actually do is to concentrate all our energy to break down those powers so that each and every Cameroonian, every one of the 30 million Cameroonians has one piece of that power. That's what we're working on, and that's where we're going to.
National unity and integration, is that going to solve it, what you just said?
Of course it is. Of course it is. You know, diversity that we have is our strength. It's not a weakness. And if you put together the entire diversity of our 250 tribes or groups and so on and so forth, when you put everything together, it's a powerful nation we have. Right now, the problem is you're putting one on the other. One is fighting the other. And that's why we're not going nowhere. What you need to do is to give the space, the necessary space for each part of that diversity to evolve. Once you've done that, the rest moves on. And guess what? When the country goes up, everybody's on board. People jump out of the boat when the boat sinks. But when the boat is on course at the right speed and everything, everybody's happy to be on board. That's the issue.
Okay. Resource management, Cameroon is described anyway. Everybody knows that Cameroon is very rich, yet considered very poor, going by the living standards of its citizens. How do you intend to manage its resources, our resources?
Well, the first thing is that you don't have resources if you don't exploit them.
Okay.
So resources that are beneath the floor are not your resources.
Okay.
They are God's resources, so you can call them what you want. It's once you go down there, dig them, take them out, and transform them into what they're supposed to be, that the country can have something in return. Now, maybe we are also blessed to have a very lazy government or a very lazy head of state who has been unable to transform that potential into reality, which means that our generation coming to power, we're basically meeting, I would say, a virgin mineral territory, or mineral province as it's called in the jargon, to be exploited and to be able to use that money to actually develop our country. Because sometimes I say we are blessed, because if those resources were dug out before, that money would all be in Geneva, Switzerland, or somewhere else by now. So that's actually, for me, it's plus minus a good thing. But we will get there. We will put in place a mining code that will attract investors. You know that mining is very capital intensive, and so you need to be able to have an enabling environment that will attract that capital to help you transform those minerals into goods that you can sell. And our policy on that is absolutely clear. We are not in for any sale of raw materials. We're in for the transformation of our raw materials in Cameroon. That's the only way you can get jobs for our youth. That's the only way you can build a country. You need to industrialize that country. And we can only industrialize that country if we use our competitive advantages existing, that is our human resources, our second hydro potential in Africa. We have the second biggest hydro potential in Africa. We need a lot of energy, we need a lot of brains, we need a lot of manpower, we need space, we need all of that. We have all of that, and that needs to be transformed so that we can have a real industrial revolution in Cameroon that will help us transform what we produce or what we have in our mines and so on, to sell transformed products rather than to sell out raw materials, just as is going to be the case with the iron ore from Balam.
Okay. Cameroon, like...
just to mention that right now, Cameroon has invested plus minus 1,000 billion CFA for a mining project that hasn't started yet, to explore iron ore from Balam and Montmamel and so on, and to sell it out to China as raw material so that we can import iron rods and every other thing metallic into Cameroon basically we'll be exporting the raw material through Kribi and importing the finished material through Douala. And that is crazy. And when you are God blessed to have so many minerals, what you do is that you transform those minerals where they are produced in Cameroon, and even in the region where they are produced. Put up industries there, transform them there. We need to build a whole rail system in Cameroon, which needs a lot of iron. We need to roof millions of houses. We need to build houses. We need iron rods. We need all of that. We have in Cameroon, just in Douala, we have about 4 factories that are doing exceptionally well with in the steel industry. Exceptionally well. We have the capacity to start producing cars and so on because we have the steel. That's what is necessary. So we need to do that rather than what we're doing today, where we are in a hurry to send out iron ore and to import the cars and the steel beams and all the other stuff that will be coming in from China and so on. I'm not against exporting, but what I'm saying is that I rather export finished cars made in Douala rather than export raw materials up to China.
Let's look at economic development and poverty alleviation of the Social Democratic Front through its flag bearer, Honourable Joshua Osih, who is our guest for tonight's edition on Prime Hour. Cameroon, like many African nations, face high levels of poverty, unemployment, and inequality. What are your top priorities in addressing this?
Well, you have a whole bundle you have put there, so you cannot have a top priority. I mean, each one is a priority in its own already, and one is very often the consequence of the other. So I would just like to point out here that we need a paradigm shift. We really need to address those issues holistically.
Let's take unemployment.
Unemployment, we have an exceptional workforce in Cameroon. We have a young population, we have a learned population, we have a population that can adapt in a very short while. So it's a very interesting human capital that we have in Cameroon. I hate calling it that way, but that's what it is. And what is happening today is that those who are in power have a software that was put in place in 1957 or 60, if you wish, and has nothing to do with what is going on today. So you need to, what we need to do in Cameroon is to move over to the knowledge economy. That is what is essential. And once you move over to the knowledge economy and you industrialize, you will be looking for people to work and you will not find them. Just when the shipyard in Limbe project was launched, you suddenly realize that we lacked people to go and work there. We had to send them to Ghana to train them. So it shows to you that once, and that was just one project. Imagine if you're taking on 20, 30, 40 such projects and you're industrializing the country and you're moving away to the knowledge economy, where what is going on right now, what is going on with the young guys at Silicon Mountain, which is marvelous. I mean, I'm always flabbergasted when I meet them there. It's exceptional. But you know, just that patch of people coding and doing that stuff of work, the last time I talked to some specialists, we could have with a good internet infrastructure, the good communication infrastructure, with an enabling environment, business environment in Cameroon, we could have anything between 100 and 500,000 jobs going on in that sector alone. And guess what? You are being paid European wages. You're being paid American wages. So you're being paid in excess of 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 million francs a month, or per job that you're doing that will hardly take you more than a month to do. And that's why it's important to invest massively in that batch, because that's where the jobs of the future are. The jobs of the future, I mean, let me take another example. Today, the EU is telling us that in 2035, they're going to stop thermal vehicles, that is vehicles taking fuel and having a thermal engine, because they're moving to electric vehicles. 2035. Meaning that by 2040, it will be difficult to have a thermal vehicle in Africa, or better said in Cameroon. Okay? Difficult. Yeah. Today, we are still training auto mechanics to repair thermal vehicles, and we haven't started training young mechanics to work on electric vehicles. It's crazy. We know that those going to class 1 today to become auto mechanics in 4 years will probably have no job. And we're doing nothing to correct that or to arrest it. Nothing. Are
you putting into question our system of education indirectly?
Well, that too. It's because the priorities are not aligned. Okay. Today we know that the knowledge economy is where the future lies. The future of industrialization, the future of our country, even the future of government will come from there. Will be digitalized, and all of that. Today, we pretend as if sending the young people with a machete to the bush to go and become farmers with a machete is a solution. No, it is just a way of reducing the number of young people on the streets. Where the solution is that if tomorrow, the farmer of tomorrow is an enterprise. Okay? It's an enterprise with a lot of knowledge, and you can transform that knowledge into value. That's the knowledge economy. That's where we're supposed to be. It's not one hustling with a cutlass inside the forest. No, it's one who knows exactly that he can feed his chicken with this, or rather that, in order to reduce the amount of money he spends on feed, and so on and so forth. That is where we're supposed to go, and the government is doing nothing to get there, and that is what we'll do from day number 1. We'll move over to that part.
Mechanized farming.
That's not mechanized farming. It's the knowledge economy is more than mechanized farming.
Okay.
The knowledge economy is one in which your added value is essentially knowledge. Let me take you an example coming from farming. Right now, we're doing pretty well farming cocoa. I mean, I myself, I'm a cocoa farmer.
Okay.
My father was one too. And we were dancing all over the place with cocoa prices at 9,000, 8,000, 7,000 francs a kilo. That is effectively what happened. Whereas, what's the price? Who makes the most money out of cocoa?
It's the guy transforming.
It's the knowledge economy. It's the guy sitting in Switzerland, transforming that into cosmetics or transforming it into chocolate. Okay? A kilogram of cocoa will sell for 9,000 francs, and everybody is very happy. Whereas the transformed cocoa, and that transformation is based on knowledge, on how you do it. Okay? And that's why it's the knowledge economy. Okay? A kilogram of transformed cocoa, the final product, has a value of about 55,000 to 60,000 CFA. So you see, it's 7, 8, 9 times the initial value when the price was highest. And it is that patch that interests me. It is that patch that interests the SDF. It's how do we keep those 60,000 francs in Cameroon and stop celebrating when we sell cocoa for 8, 7, 8, 9,000 francs abroad.
Okay. Let's talk about foreign investment and boost of the local economy. How are you going to get many more of these guys interested in Cameroon? Because from what I gather, you want us to do almost everything, but we also cannot do without a foreign investment.
I didn't say I want us to do everything. That's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
What I'm simply saying is that we need to take our comparative advantages and transform them into competitive advantages.
Okay.
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 That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I don't want us to be producing snow. Okay. I don't want us to to be running after to be fishing salmon. No, but I mean,
what is produced
we are,
here?
we are a country of prawns, and we should be the #1 prawn exporter in the world. That's our name. Okay. So we should be able to make use of our waters, our waterways, and our maize and everything to produce as much prawns as possible to feed the world. That's what we're supposed to do. And what I'm saying, to answer your question, sorry, for the foreign direct investment, you don't need to be a magician. Go to the doing business report of the World Bank. Go to it. Visit it. I think we are 100 and something. We are right down. Okay, we are one of the worst countries in the world to do business in. And correct the flaws that are in it. And the first thing you need to correct to do business correctly is to have an independent judicial system. When the judicial system is corrupt and when anybody can influence a magistrate, you don't have a judicial system, and when you don't have a judicial system, nobody comes to your country to invest. They only come to your country to invest when they have the protection of the executive. And that's why you see all investors going to Yaoundé instead of being in Douala and Limbe and so on, where the business really is. They go to Yaoundé to beg for protection because they understand that the judicial system will never protect them. So you need to correct that first. You need to have an independent justice that works. That's how people come in. When they know that Cum Leonard cannot come and seize their machines, Cum Leonard cannot come and close down the shop because of X, Y, Z, and so on. That is when they invest in your country. When they are sure that the money they make, they can actually take it home, they come and invest. But then you have to put in measures for local protection. You need to put in measures as well that make sure that Cameroonians have the biggest share of the cake, so that we don't turn into a country like Cote d'Ivoire, which is seen very beautifully from outside, but within, everything is owned by foreigners and nothing by the Ivorians themselves. So that needs to be addressed as well.
Okay. Given the global economic challenges, including the effects of climate change, what steps will you take to ensure a sustainable development in Cameroon, balancing growth with environment protection?
Well, I always start by saying that environmental protection is an opportunity. It's not a challenge. It's not a burden. It's a huge opportunity. And we've fallen besides it. I'll take you 2 examples. We have been unable to trade carbon. I know of countries that have made billions in dollars from carbon trading. We've done nothing. Or we've been unable to do anything with our green belt, that is, with all what we have. You know that a big part of the Congo Basin, which is the 2nd biggest forest basin in the world, is in Cameroon. And we are unable to transform that advantage into something that reflects in jobs and so on. Know that the #1 job purveyor in the world is tourism. #1. And in Uganda, they made a study. For instance, in gorilla tourism in Uganda, they made a study on the value of 1 gorilla during its lifetime. They found out that 1 gorilla contributes to about $35 million during its lifetime for the Rwandan economy. Okay? Now, Uganda, sorry, that was Uganda. Rwanda and Uganda together, with the eastern part of the DRC, they have plus minus 1,200 gorillas. Transformed it into something extraordinary that gives thousands of jobs and that brings in a lot of money into the country. Cameroon has in excess of 100,000 gorillas. Okay, we have actually 100 times more than what they have, and we're unable to transform that into something that brings wealth into the country. So you see, by protecting these areas, by putting up national parks, but people take it as a burden because they don't see what comes out of it, whereas it could be something exceptional. Tourism is what makes a country grow. It brings in not only the foreign direct investment, but it brings in as well currencies. It brings in foreign reserves into the country en masse. and it helps those places, those remote places where those parks and so on work. I think that's tourism. I've talked carbon sequestration, I've talked tourism, I can go on and on, but protecting the environment is not a challenge, it is an opportunity.
Okay. Education is key to Cameroon's future. What steps will you take to improve education systems, particularly in rural and undeserved areas? You already talked about you already talked about it.
Well, I can still talk about
okay.
it. I mean, I stood in front of a convention to be their candidate, so I'll never shy away talking from what I'm offering.
Yeah.
First of all, digitalization. It's a must. It has to happen as fast as possible. It is not normal that kids still go to school with 9 kilograms on their backs of books. And the whole mafia around the book industry needs to stop. And even before it digitalized, I find it not normal that nearly 100%, if not maybe 98% of all books used by our kids are printed abroad, whereas we have all of these
you have printing presses?
Printing presses, thank you, who could do that. The digitalization is the key. We have worked on it with 12,000 francs. A parent has a tablet, a tab that is tropicalized, that is strengthened, that can go under the rain, and you can actually download all your manuals into it. As a matter of fact, you can go above it. You can even have video tutorials. You can have whatever you want to have in the form of MOOCs. Okay, you can have everything on that tab, and you can even do your homework on. And if you are lucky to be in a place where you are connected through the GSM or through the Wi-Fi, actually, your teachers can even follow your evolution. They can follow what you're doing on your tabs, so that they can mark you distance before you even come to school in the morning. They already know who did his homework, who did not do his homework, and so on. And it goes even further because you have connected blackboards as well today. They do not cost a lot. They're actually cheaper than the blackboards we use today, because guess what, I've been building, I mean, I've been offering some classrooms, and I know the cost of a normal blackboard, and the difference is not huge. The difference is about 30,000 francs to have an electronic blackboard you put on the wall. So yeah, the challenge, of course, is energy and so on. So you must make sure that each and every school, at least those in remote areas, have a solar panel or two where they can recharge their tablets on when they come to school and so on. It's a transformation that must arrive, and that's just one. The second, I would say, we have a system today. The last time I checked, we had about 405,000 students in our public universities all over the country. And of the 405,000 students, I was told that about 350,000 actually are in arts or anything related to arts. And you cannot build a country that way. It's just impossible. Okay, and what is happening today is that the faculties dealing with, I bundle all of that with arts, have an open access. I mean, you just pay, you get in. And then where we really need the Cameroonians in medicine, in engineering and so on, it is a closed access. It's the opposite that should happen. You should close at the exit to make sure that the best people come out of those STEM schools, architecture, engineering, medicine and so on. And everybody who wants to get into those schools should be allowed to get in, so that we have as many engineers as possible. That's the only way we can build our country, because guess what? Today, when you look out on the streets, you have Chinese people building our roads.
Almost all roads, yeah.
Yeah, but you have...
We train engineers in Cameroon who cannot build roads.
Well, not that they cannot. Are they given an opportunity to do so? No, I don't think so. But the point is that we should be having hundreds of thousands of engineers, because we are a country that needs to be developed, needs to be built. So we need to train the people who will build this country. We cannot be counting on foreigners to come and do it for us. And if we are paying all that tax to finance all those schools and higher education institutions, that is where the money should go. That is where the money should go. And by the way, all those going into the STEM direction, that is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, they should be encouraged. They should actually have a scholarship to get there. Let us transform it in such a way that you pay to access the part of education where we have too many people on the labor market, and you get paid to get into those parts of our educational system where we have too few of them, so that we'll have more people coming out of those schools who can transform this country. That's the only way it works. If you want to industrialize a country, you need engineers. You cannot do it otherwise.
Okay, we need this, but since we're talking about our schools, looks like you talked about a free school.
Well, yeah,
for primary.
that is the SDF position since 1990. I'm just reiterating it. Free education up to the end of the first cycle of the secondary educational system. Free education means free education. We're not going to hide free education with PTA levies and all the rest. If people want to have their PTA level, PTA association outside of the school, they can go and do that. That's their that's a choice, but it should not be a condition for a child to be admitted or for a child to go from one class to another. Education must be free. Each and every Cameroonian kid should have the same opportunity to evolve in his or her education. And we think that at the end of the first cycle of secondary education, at that point, children should start making choices. For instance, we want an apprenticeship system, just as is the case today in Germany and in other evolved economies, where you can start actually, at that point, you can decide to start learning a trade, whatsoever you want, so that you can be working in a company, in a normal environment. That is, if you want to be a plumber, you work in a plumbing company at the same time. What is happening today in those countries is that you work for 3 days and you go to school for 2 days, so that after your apprenticeship you are a fully trained craftsperson in that trade, and we can use you today. I mean, Lionel, you live it every day. You call in a plumber, you ask yourself whether you're called in a problem or a solution. You give your car to a mechanic, you ask yourself whether the car is better off or worse off before you brought it there. So we need to arrest all of that. And that can only be done with a certain political vision that addresses those issues. And we cannot do that if we stay with the same government that is in place that created those problems. We need to change.
How does the SDF be getting money to take care of all of this?
Well, first of all,
we talk about free education from nursery, primary to secondary.
Yes. First of all, let me be clear with this. Right now in the law, education is supposed to be free.
Okay.
Okay. So we're not going to.
They're not inventing anything.
We're not inventing. We're simply saying it must happen the way the law provides it to be. Education must be free. And right now, the taxpayer is paying for our educational system, and it's the same thing that will happen. But we'll even go further. We'll make sure that the schools in remote areas get a push, because we've been losing too many Einsteins concentrating in our schools in Douala, Yaoundé, Bamenda, and Boya and Limbe. We've been losing too many of them. You know, the smartest guys I had in school when I was in CPC Bali came very often from very remote areas. You wouldn't even imagine that these mathematicians could come from those places. And so you need to reinforce that. And how do you do that when you have a political vision? How do you do that? Very simply. You put a coefficient on the difficulty of the job of a teacher. Okay? That's the first thing you do. So a teacher who is in Furuawa will have a pay higher than a teacher who is here in Bonamusadi where we sit. Because here you have everything. And a student who is in Furuawa will have a special attention that is unnecessary for a student here. Why am I talking about Furuawa? Because the communication is impossible, because lack of internet, because no roads, no light, no electricity. So the conditions to study there are much more difficult than they are here. So you need to make an enabling, you need to create that enabling environment for the student there. I have nothing against Furuawa, I've been there once, but it's a difficult place. I mean, my village is just as difficult. I could have talked about my dear, which is where I come from, which just has the same difficulties, but I just wanted to raise an example of something many people understand. And once you do that, The second thing you do is that you motivate your teachers. The teachers should be the best paid folk out there in the civil service. But you cannot just distribute money to teachers. It must come with results. Today, whether a school has 0 at the GC or another school has 100% is irrelevant for the career of the principal of those two schools and even of the teachers. But you should be able, you know, in great nations, actually the person who is tested in a class are not the students, it's the teacher. You test the students to know where the teacher is. And when you have good teachers, you should pay them a bonus for the good work they're doing. Okay? So you can keep the two. You can continue testing the kids, and from the results the kids give you in their tests, you know where the student, the teacher stands, and you make sure that those teachers are being paid with a bonus proportional to the value they are giving to those kids. So if you have a school where you have 100% at the GCE, for instance, you can take that as a benchmark, and you have 0 disciplinary cases, you can say, okay, that means that you all enjoy a bonus of 20% on your pay, and so on and so forth. If you fall down and you lose it, and so on. So those are the measures you take when school is important for you. And education is extremely important for me. Education is very important for the SDF. And we're not just going to dish out money into education, we'll make sure that the results follow. To make sure that the results follow, those are some of the examples of measures that we're going to take to allow our kids excel. And just one last point that I wanted to make is cross-border, because I had asked this question about tribalism and so on. You know, Mr. Ejo brought in regional equilibrium, and I'm fundamentally against it. Why? Because what is happening today in regional equilibrium, and I just want to take the example of pushing the schools in the remote areas a bit further. Take a result that made a lot of noise. I think it was entrance into ERIC. Yeah. You had 11 students at the end because there was some mishap that happened, but initially there were supposed to be 10. The 10 were presented as coming from the 10 regions. But actually all 10 students came from Douala and Yaoundé. Yeah. Because regional equilibrium is not taking a child called Osih going to school in Yaoundé, Douala, or a child called Koum going to school in Douala, in the best school in Douala, and saying that that child is representative of this region. The child must go to school in that region. That's the regional equilibrium. The whole idea is to give some sort of equal opportunities to all, making sure that those who went to school in the Northwest, in the middle of the crisis, okay, are protected to be part of the national cake tomorrow. So it is the regional equilibrium doesn't mean that someone from the Northwest going to the best school, maybe the American school in Yaoundé or Douala, is representative of the North. Sometimes those kids have never ever been in the Northwest. Okay, so you need to change that. And I think you can even come down one level further. Is that you, instead of talking of regional equilibrium, talk about council equilibrium. Because a kid from Bamenda and a kid, take again Furuawa, or a kid from Akwaya and a kid from Boya, they don't have the same opportunities. Sure. Okay? They don't have the same level of teachers. They don't have, whether you like it or not, that's a fact today. And so you need to correct that too. So it makes no sense that when you take kids from the Southwest, all of them are from Boya, some are maybe from Limbe, and when you are lucky, 1 or 2 comes from Kubano. Then where are the kids from Dian? Where are the kids from Lebialem? Where are those from Kupe Mandenguba? They have to be part of it too. So you need to work that out. Anyway, that was just a side.
Okay, that's for education. And let's now talk about health. What are you going to correct as far as our health sector is concerned?
Well, what do you call health assets? Because that's, if you don't define what you call health asset, then I can't answer the question, because you can look at it in 2 ways.
Yeah, we're talking about
health assets can be a hospital. A health asset can be a healthy.
No, I'm talking about accessibility to medical facilities.
Well, First of all, once you get to medical facilities, once you get to the hospital, your health system has already failed.
Okay.
Because the health system works when the people don't go to hospital.
Okay.
Or the fewest of the fewest go to hospital. That's the health system. And that's what the government is trying to, well, the WHO encouraged African governments to go towards universal health coverage. And the government of Cameroon is trying to do that, but they're doing it the wrong way, or the opposite way. Because the most important element in health is information. Okay, that's the most important. It's 80% of health. It's information. If you don't know that something is bad for your health, if you are not informed, made aware of it, if you don't even know where the health hazards are, you understand that the whole system will collapse thereafter. I take an example of COVID. The only way the world was able to suppress COVID was the massive investment in information. Every Cameroonian knew about COVID and how you get it and how you protect yourself. Everyone knew, you know. So the first investment in health is information. Okay. People don't see that, but health is universal. Okay. Now, the second thing when you talk about health is prevention. Okay, and you need to invest massively in prevention. And it's only after that that you come into health services proper, because people did not have the right information, they were unable to prevent themselves from diseases. Now they have a case and they're in hospital. They got themselves exposed. So you need to you need to look at it. You know, the UN came with this new concept that I love, One Health. Everything, the environment, your homes, everything is about health. You know, if you walk on the streets of Douala or Yaoundé with tons and tons of garbage, it's a health hazard. So you can live a very healthy life, but just going to work is more dangerous than if you were drinking tons of alcohol and smoking, because you're crossing all of that. So anyway, to come back to the point you're raising, in hospitals, lots must be done. The first thing is that our system today is built on the fact that you go to a public hospital and you pay for services. That must stop. Okay. It must stop. And even if you pay for some services, that money must go into the state coffers and must not be shared by the personnel. Because right now, because it is shared by the personnel and because the personnel is poorly paid and they need that money to survive, that's the truth, the payment of that fee is actually a health hazard. If you go to some public hospitals, fortunately enough for us, not all, you come there with fever and a headache and joint pains. They will make you go through a battery of tests, whereas they know that you have malaria. And maybe you get there with 15 or 20,000 francs in your pocket. They make you go through the battery of tests because they need those 20,000. Okay? Because what happens is that when you pay in a hospital, there is no line in the budget of Cameroon, revenue from state hospitals. It doesn't exist. Everything is shared amongst them, up to the minister. So what happens is that they need to get those 20,000 out of your pocket, so they make you do all those tests. And at the end of the day, when they tell you have malaria, you don't even have the 2,000 francs necessary for the malaria drugs. Okay? So that's why it's a health hazard. And it needs to stop. One other thing that needs to stop is the medical evacuation. It is not normal that some privileged people can be evacuated abroad to hospitals there, and this is paid for by the money of the taxpayer in the Moya market. That's not normal. So it needs to stop. And guess, Mr. Leonard, why this is also important. Because our hospitals do not function, because those who are supposed to make them function do not go to those hospitals. They go to Dubai, they go to England, they go to France and so on, and Switzerland for their treatment. They need to come and start getting their treatment here, locally. And once they'll get their treatment locally, those hospitals will transform. I was catching an international flight, and the director of one of our state hospitals was boarding the flight, going to see his doctor abroad. And I said to him, look, that is just your travel today is the embodiment of the failure of our health system. Those things need to stop. We need to invest in our healthcare units. We need to put in place an affordable, universal health insurance that will make it such that those who are down the ladder of our society don't need to have sleepless nights to get to health, to get access to healthcare. We need to work on the entire health ecosystem to make sure that information is produced and given out, that everybody is empowered to understand where we stand and what is important health-wise for them and not. We need to make sure that we do a maximum of prevention, and we need to have a sound environment free from all these hazards we're having today, all this garbage disposal all over on our streets and so on. All of that needs to change. And once all of that will change, you will see that our health will be much better, and we'll be able to spend much less in our hospitals because we'll have less people knocking at the hospitals.
Now, we have a fundamental issue where the government spends money training medical doctors, teachers as well, who are all taken out of this nation in search for greener pastures. Is the SDF conscious of that?
Yeah, we are conscious.
Yeah,
I'm glad you just okay, and because if you are a medical doctor, you sent to Bakassi and your husband is an engineer, I don't see where he will work in Bakassi, so probably he will stay back wherever you were or move closer. I mean, the closest would be probably Limbe, and so you need to move to see each other, and so you need money for that. So that coefficient is a very important incentive to make sure that we have quality people in all our remote areas.
Since we're talking about the system, our health system in Cameroon, and you went further because you took me by surprise, talking about the essence of prevention to exposing ourselves to what would take us to the hospital. There is a big problem in Cameroon with waste disposal, with what we know about Izakam, the town of the city of Yaoundé. It's nasty, as well as Douala. You are in Douala and you saw the streets before coming here. Is the SDF something particular to our arrest police?
Well, first of all, you call the company. I will not permit myself to call a company because the responsibility of waste management is the council and not the company working for the council. So when it's dirty, it's the council. It's not the company. And the council has the right to change the company, has the right to summon the company, has the right to do whatsoever. What I know is that these councils have not been paying their bills for years now, and so when you don't pay your bills, the result you get is what we have in our streets. But I would like to say that the waste management sector as well is needs a holistic approach. Okay. You know, the first thing is that you need to be able, well, right now what is happening is that the taxpayer through the councils is paying for waste management. You and I are paying for it, whether we throw out dirt or not. Okay, that should change. The whole approach should be different. It should be, if you are a polluter, if you have waste, you should pay for the waste. Okay, from that point on, people will throw away a bit less, and they'll be much more careful to recycle and so on. Secondly, you need to put up, just like in the rest of the world, opportunities for waste recycling, making it such that people throwing away garbage can already select garbage that is recycled and that is garbage that is not recycled. Today, people throw everything in a punch. Just the vegetable waste that is thrown. It's about 80%, if I'm not mistaken, of all our waste. That is plantain peelings and corn and so on and so forth. It's 80% of all of that is value. Actually, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. The problem is that it is mixed up with batteries and plastic bottles, and that is the real problem. So taking it out, sorting it is a problem. So if we could already, at the level of our homes, do that selection, would already solve 80% of our problems with waste. So you see, the approach is not just who is coming to pick up the waste to go and throw it away. It's already who is throwing away that waste and what waste are we throwing away and how we are throwing it away. And if we're throwing away waste, in the rest of the world, people pay to throw away waste. So we should pay too. I mean, all the vegetable waste like the plantain peelings and so on for free, because that is actually money. People can make manure from it. People can make biogas from it. 1,001 things can be done with it, which is very important for the community. But the rest of the stuff that needs to be discarded or incinerated, you need to pay for that service to happen. For it to be carried from your point of disposal to where it's incinerated, you need to pay for it. So right now, people are paying for waste they are not producing, and those producing most of the waste are not paying.
Okay, let's look at infrastructure and development. What is your vision for improving infrastructure across the country, especially in transportation, energy, and communication sectors?
Could you reformulate your sentence so that I better understand it? Because that your sentence is like opening the Bible, you know, we'll be here for another 10 days.
Yeah, it's because I have gone through what I have to discuss, and if we have to look at it one after the other, we can see have to add.
No, I mean what do you want to understand?
What is the SDF doing to improve on our road transport system?
Well, the first thing is that you need to have a coherent public policy on transportation. Coherent. Okay. Let me tell you what is going on right now. We spent 10 years to have a highway between Yaoundé and Boumdebel. Okay, we're spending billions for that highway to connect with the Douala-Yaoundé road. And why did we spend so much time and money? Because nothing was planned. So it is when the Chinese got there with their trucks that the population in Lobo, for instance, blocked everything and said there is no road passing here if you don't pay us for using our land and so on. And from Boumdebel right to Yaoundé, they know in the Ministry of Public Works for the past 25 years where that road is supposed to pass. It's a secret because they are going to buy plots on the way so that they can sell it back to themselves when the road wants to pass. And why is it not such that, I mean, sending just 2 bulldozers to open up the forest where the road will pass tomorrow, okay, so that everybody knows that this place cannot be for sale, it's where a road will pass, will save us tens of years and billions of CFAs just doing that. Saying, okay, we already know today that we need to take a high-speed train up right to Kusiri. Where will that train pass? Let us secure that corridor today. Let us not wait for 20 years when that or 10 years when that high-speed train will arrive before we start breaking down houses and so on and so forth. So that's just one micro element why a coherent transport policy, I mean, in everything, we need to put transport policies in place that are long-lasting, that go on a vision of nearly 50 years. Make sure you cover everything so that when you do your things, you do them the right way. It will cost you between 20 and 40% less than what we're spending today, and we'll do it much faster. Let me take another example. Look at what is happening with the Edea-Kribi road. Edea-Kribi road is one of the most dangerous roads today. It's impracticable. Okay, that was a beautiful road for so many years. But that road was built to transport traffic, leisure traffic going to Kribi. It was not built to transport thousands of trucks coming with 30 tons of load on their back. That's the whole issue. So we build a port in Kribi. Thousands of trucks suddenly use that road that was not made for it, for that type of a traffic. The road gets bad within 1 year, and everybody says, what is going on? And guess what? They fix the road, and 6 months later, it's back bad again, because the road was not constructed for heavy load traffic. Okay? So that is an incoherence of a political, of a public policy that needs, and it shows you how important it is to do that on everything that you decide. So the big infrastructure projects of a country can only come about if you look at the entire country and you say, this is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to do it, and you start today. Whatever it costs you, you take it there. And the second thing is that we have been, many people tend to believe that Cameroon is too indebted. I do too, but on a whole different note. Is that the level of indebtedness is not high, but the reason of that indebtedness is catastrophic. When you indebt yourself to build a 650 billion stadium that you don't use, you have a problem. But when you indebt yourself as a country with the same 650 billion to build a 4-lane highway to Bamenda, that will make it such that foodstuffs and whatever coming in from Bamenda and people going there can move easily, it is an investment. And so that debt is a good debt because it's productive. It makes the GDP of the country move upwards, you know. And so the problem we have with our debt, because you cannot bring in that infrastructure without debt. The problem we have with our debt is that we have too much debt that is taken up, consumed by unproductive projects, and the productive projects like the Limbe Deep Sea Port that is supposed to boost our GDP by at least 4 points. The day it will come, and it will come with us in power, they are being frozen. You understand? So we do things that bring absolutely nothing to the national economy with debt, and we are afraid or we shy away from debt to do productive projects. So be it road transportation, rail transportation, maritime transportation, air transportation, all of that needs massive investments that can only happen if you have the capacity to call for debt.
Okay, urban decay is an issue in Cameroon. How will you ensure that cities are developed in a sustainable, inclusive and planned way?
Well, it comes back to what I was just saying. It's the same. You need to have solid public policies that take you into that direction. And it is, again, a holistic approach. You don't just, town planning is not about the roads. It's not about the streets. It's not about the buildings. It's about everything. It's what is that town for? Why should, you know, when you build a factory somewhere, and you know that factory will create 1,000 jobs, you already need to understand that you need 1,000 homes. You already need to understand that you need schools for at least 3,000 kids. You understand? You have all of that. Then you also have to understand that you need more power. Not just the power for the factory, but also all the electrical power for all those new houses and all those new families, etc. So it's a holistic approach. So when you do this, you don't just say, I'm going to build these roads, I'm going to build. No, you say, okay, where are we locating what? How are we doing it? Why are we doing it there? And from there on, you start planning, and you work with specialists who know that job very well. We have one who is very good at that, Honourable Fobi, who is our shadow cabinet minister for town planning, and he comes out with a blueprint that you impose. You understand? And you impose on everybody. And that's the only way it works.
Okay. Foreign policy. How will you handle relations with former colonial powers, global superpowers? When persons are thinking that maybe France is a problem, America is too much into African affairs, and a host of others. How are you going to relate with them?
Well, first of all, you need to have mutual respect of, you know, every other country looks for its own interests. nobody, no other country will work in the interest of Cameroon. That doesn't happen. Okay, so it's not because you're France, Germany, Nigeria. No, every country looks for its own interest. So you need that mutual respect, first of all. Then you need to see which relationships can make you gain most. Nigeria is a superpower next to us. We have 1,000 kilometers of common boundary. We have the same tribes on two sides of the boundaries. Most families are shared between the two countries and so on. And we shouldn't shy away from that. Is our biggest opportunity for development. We should work together with Nigeria as brothers to make sure that our common objectives are being met. Nigeria should be our #1 partner, not just because it's a 200 million market, but guess what? We are in the African Free Trade Agreement. We should be able to tell foreign investors who come to invest in Cameroon tomorrow that you're not investing your money in a 30 million consumption market, but in a 230 million consumption market, because we have so many corridors open to Nigeria, and we should develop that. For me, the boundary between Cameroon and Nigeria should be open 24 hours on 24. It's a stupidity to close it down at 6 p.m. and open it at 6 a.m. It makes absolutely no sense. We should be living together with Nigeria and not against each other.
Not against each other. Before I let you go, you talked about the closure of Enam. Are you still holding on to that?
Of course.
And you also talked about moving the capital from Yaoundé.
No, I never talked about that. Okay. What I'm simply saying goes in line with your former question about town planning.
Town planning, okay.
Removing the capital of the center region. From Yaoundé to any other city, like because it makes no sense to have the president of the republic and the governor in the same town. It makes, if you just keep the actual administration as it is, it makes absolutely no sense to have a capital city that is at the same time regional headquarters. Okay, it makes no sense. And another city within the center region should benefit from all what comes with being the headquarter of a region. Okay, nobody in Yaoundé, when you can see the minister, nobody goes and sees the governor, who has nothing to do apart official outings, is the governor of the center, because everything is handled by the ministers. Okay, so he is just there filling up an office for official ceremonies and so on, but he can be somewhere else. He could be in Akunolinga, Bafia, Izeka, wherever you want it. Criteria can be drawn up to know where it goes to, but I think, in my own opinion, just as what happened between Boya and Limbe should happen there. Secondly, I don't see why many institutions are found in Yaoundé, even if it's the capital. I don't see why. I don't see what IRAD, an agronomic institution, is doing in the middle of a city. Okay, I don't see many of those elements, even the army, using half of the city. I don't see what they're doing there. When you go to London, you don't see at Westminster, you don't see the army. So all those things can be moved left and right to make sure that it gives some fresh air to our capital, to our darling capital, Yaoundé, and to make sure that the city vibrates as it's supposed to vibrate, not in traffic jams, but rather as a clean and efficient national capital. So that is the approach. Now, Enam is it's a completely different story. Enam was put in place to perpetuate the colonial legacy of the French. Okay? And that is the only reason why that school exists. I have never said that those who went to Enam will lose their diplomas. I have never said that those who went to Enam will lose their jobs. I have never even said that those who are actually in Enam will fall out of the school. I'm simply saying that it is a monument of colonialism that needs to be closed. It doesn't mean that magistrates don't need to be trained. It doesn't mean that administrators don't need to be trained. All of that can happen elsewhere. Nigeria functions perfectly well without an Enam. The USA functions perfectly well without an Enam. As a matter of fact, even France, who still had the last Enam, closed it down because they themselves understood that it was a legacy too heavy to carry. So we need to close that. And why is it so important as well? Because the real what is happening in Cameroon is what you call state capture. Civil servants have captured the state. And if you look at it, they're all from that school. They're nearly all from Inam, in one way or the other. Okay? It is not the CPDM party that rules Cameroon. It is a group of civil servants who have captured the state and who are running this country. And for that to stop, the establishment that produces them needs to be closed down. You cannot do it otherwise, because it needs to stop. And that school has trained administrators to perpetuate the colonial rule or the colonial way of ruling a country. Okay? It hasn't trained creative people to solve our problems. So if you want to have the 1,001 creative minds that Cameroon produces every day, here and there in the world and even in Cameroon, you need to make sure that all those creative minds have access to those positions too. How will they be having access when you have a school producing automatically all those administrators? And when you get in that school, when you come out of it, you get into the clique that has captured the state, and you continue to perpetuate that state capture because that's what you benefit from. So that is why that school needs to be closed. Okay? The customs can train its people, the taxation can train its people. All these guys using that school today, they have the means to build their schools, and our universities can have specialized schools for all of that, and let it be open, because what we think the National Civil Service should be, it should be open. And you should apply just like at any other job, just like when you come to My Media Prime, you apply to be a journalist here, and they take the best. That should be the case all over the place. And it should not go through bribing your way through into a school, and then we end up, because when you bribe your way through into Inam, Cameroon suffers that 5-minute bribe for the next 40 years. For the next 40 years, that individual controls the destiny of Cameroon, and that is what is wrong. And that is what needs to be changed, and you can only have a bold leadership that can come and arrest that and stop it and say, now we'll put an end to it. And from now on, that's the way it works. You need to be competent to have a position. You need to apply to have that position, and we put a competitive interview in place, and the best candidate will get it, and we move on.
Okay. Unfortunately, we are out of time. We have to end here. Thank you very much, Honourable Joshua Osih, for accepting to come and talk to our audience today.
Well, Leonard, thank you for inviting me, and I hope that you'll invite me again so that we can talk about the other parts that the time constraints didn't allow you to get in. And I would like to wish all your viewers an excellent evening. Thank you. We want to thank all of you for watching. It's true, we had so much to discuss, but time could not permit. And we hope that when we call again, Honourable is going to answer to be part of our editions of Prime R. We know, for now we call him Honourable. After October, they're going to call him His Excellency. Wish you the best, Honourable. Thank you very much. Thank you. And see you hopefully before October for the second part. Okay. Thank you for watching. Stay blessed. Bye-bye.